You can start, Vishnu.
All right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Vishnu Kandaba. I'm from Bangalore, India. So I just finished my 12th grade through the Karnataka State Board, and I will be attending the University of Southern California this fall to study computational neuroscience. And I'm also the director of events at SM. So yeah, Stuti, you can go next.
Hi everyone, my name is Stuti Chakrabarti. I am currently a rising second year PhD student at the University of Southern California Neuroplasticity and Neurorehabilitation Lab. My program is occupational science and my concentration is in neuroscience. My lab does the Enigma Stroke Consortium on neuroimaging. So we basically work on research grade large globally pooled data sets of T1, T2 weighted MRI scans of patients with stroke. And we are one of the leading centers in the world for manual lesion tracing of stroke lesions. And right now I'm kind of working on developing an acute pipeline for lesion tracing on clinical grade scans, which is basically what people get when they're admitted with a stroke to the hospital. So they are not amazing research grade quality, but the idea is to pull in that data and try to get more information from it so that we can develop and understand better treatment algorithms for people with stroke. And we also use that information for predictive modeling using machine learning algorithms and predictive modeling for stroke recovery. Apart from that, I'm also interested in the intersection of health technology, specifically stroke recovery technologies and human beings, and how like specific user experiences from stroke survivors is helpful for developing better technologies. So I think I'll stop there. Yeah, also I got my undergrad from Christian Medical College, Vellore in India, and I have a bachelor's degree in occupational therapy. Nice to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Spatika. I moved here from India last September. I did my undergrad at the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research in Mohali, and I focused on biology and did my final year thesis at the Indian Institute of Science in Neuroscience. And I'm currently at Oxford. I'm doing the MSc in Neuroscience, and I will be moving to Cambridge next month for my PhD. I work in behavioral and systems neuroscience, and I'm interested in preclinical models and neuroethology. Yeah, I think that's more than enough. It's really nice to be here.
So hi, everyone, and thanks for inviting me. So my name is John, and I have a bachelor's and master's in human anatomy and cell biology from Nigeria. And currently I'm pursuing my PhD here in Norway. They're at the Arctic University of Norway in Tromsø. And when I work with a group of neuroscientists who are interested in unraveling the reward system, so the complexity of the reward system and how it regulates rewarding behaviors. So we're particularly interested in how behaviors can shift from anticipation to probably motivation, and how maybe the reward system also regulates being motivated to do a behavior and you want to then we are also interested in studying the reward system also in pathological conditions. So for this, we use feeding behavior and sexual behavior. Yeah, thanks.
So much for this amazing introduction. So I think I will allow any of the speakers to take over with what they have planned for the day. Meanwhile, I'd like to remind you guys to ask as many questions as possible. This is a session meant for you to answer all your questions. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat.
I can just start. I'm not exactly sure what we're starting with, but maybe I can just talk about my experience applying to grad school abroad. Is that okay, Ivy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I did an integrated bachelor's and master's in India, which is a 5-year undergraduate degree. And I actually had a very interesting route because I applied for something called the 1+3 MSc plus DPhil in neuroscience at Oxford. And that's basically it's basically accepts a couple of students onto the entire 4-year program, and it accepts a few students onto the 1-year program. And I'm on the 1-year program. And basically after that, you can reapply to stay on here for another 3 years to do the PhD, or you can choose to shift somewhere else, which is what I decided to do. So I'll be moving to Cambridge this year for my PhD. But if you have any questions on applying to the UK or Europe in general, because that was mainly the focus of where I looked at, then I'm happy to answer those. And also, if you're interested in getting into behavioral neuroscience, especially transitioning between the molecular and clinical aspects to the more behavioral and system side of things, then I'm more than happy to answer those questions.
Yeah, I can go next. I actually don't have a master's degree, so I have a 4-year bachelor's degree, with which I was eligible to apply for PhD programs in the US. And this is something a lot of people don't know. So I think it's important to mention that if you have a 4-year bachelor degree, or if you have a 3-year bachelor degree with a 2-year master's, like Spatika had from ISA, you can apply for PhD programs in the US. But it also comes with a lot of additional profile building and kind of like acquiring more research experience. So I think when I was applying to grad school, we were just recovering from COVID. So I did take a lot of opportunities that came, with COVID. A lot of things became remote. So it was helpful for me to kind of work on projects remotely without having to have like a lot of funding and for travel and things like that. So I think that was useful. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions on like applying to PhD programs in the US. I also have a clinical background, so I'm a clinician by training, but I have now shifted to I'm still doing a little bit of clinical work, but it's mostly computational and also with imaging. So I'm happy to take any questions on that.
So for me, I had an anatomy background, and it was kind of difficult for me to navigate from anatomy to neuroscience because more specifically in Nigeria, we don't have like Department of Neurosciences or an Institute of Neuroscience. So we just have like group of amazing scientists who are just interested in doing research in the brain. So they just come together to form a group, but not like we take neuroscience as a course, or like you have it in other developed institutes. So it was really kind of difficult for me, especially due to the fact that I had anatomy as a background. Then as an anatomist, then I was only exposed to neuroanatomy. But then I had these limitations when it comes to courses like neurophysiology, neuropharmacology, neurobiochemistry. And that was really very difficult for me, especially if I want to pursue a postgraduate studies abroad, I should also have knowledge in all that. So what I did for my case was I needed to build a profile for myself. So I made use of the COVID period. So then I also had this difficulty with funding, because most of the times it's so sad that my country doesn't support so much of education. So if you're coming from maybe Nigeria or some parts of Africa, you have to be very, very proactive. So what I did was I had to like try to work on my CV, building on my CV by at least first of all trying to take up free online courses on Coursera. I believe you know more much about Coursera. So, because one of the questions I asked myself was, if I'm applying for a PhD position in the States or in any part of Europe, then I'm going to be competing against other students who have maybe masters in neuroscience or bachelor grad in neuroscience. Then that is also going to be a limitation for me. So I had to take up this opportunity by upgrading my CV by applying for lots of online courses in neuroscience. So and thanks to Coursera, because they provide this financial waiver. All you just have to do is apply, and you apply for financial waiver. It takes about 2 weeks for that to be approved. So with that, I had access to several courses in neuroscience. I was able to take some online courses on molecular neuroscience, and some, I think, from some universities in the States. Then also with Coursera, I was able to start learning how to use Python. And I believe those were they really helps me in a way, because now I added that to my CV, and it helps my CV grow. And also I had to reach out to several mentors, because mentors really help. So I had to reach out to so many mentors. What I do is I look out for international conferences, then I apply to them. Even if I don't have like a grant to attend the conference, I just stay proactive and tell them I can join online. And then after that, I just reach out to facilitators in the conferences. I remember there was this conference where I reached out to one doctor like that, Chapin Rodriguez. Then I was like, hi, Chapin, I'm interested in pursuing a PhD abroad, but I don't know if you have some time to look at my motivational letter and my CV. So mentors like Chapin helps me go through my CVs and corrected my motivation letter. So I had like so many of them that I reached out to that helped me look at my CVs, and so many I'm also thankful to. But then as time goes on, I also needed to work on myself. Then I started signing up for some workshops and then summer schools and neuroscience schools like that. Although it comes with lots and lots of rejection, but you have to be proactive. Then I got my first grant to attend the West African Hebrew School. Then I also got a grant to attend another Hebrew school in Morocco for African students. So I think that was just how it started. So if you're particularly interested in that, asking questions about your motivation later, upgrading your CV, or how to apply for summer schools, or some workshops, or how you can also apply for free courses online, you can write to me. So if you're also interested in pursuing a PhD in the States, like in America, you can also direct your questions to me, because I also got an offer in the United States of America. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So unlike the other guys, I'm going for my undergraduate, right? So I just finished my 12th grade, and the process for undergraduate programs, especially in the US, is completely different from what you would expect in like countries like India or anywhere else east of the world. So there are multiple barriers as well when you do undergraduate studies abroad. The first thing is mostly financial. It's like really, really expensive to go abroad, especially for your undergrad and when you don't get any funding. So for that, there are two types of things that you can do. You can either look for financial aid, which is based on, it can be based on your, like your financial need, your citizenship, etc. And the other is merit scholarship. And that is usually what international students aim for, and it's very, very competitive. So usually they have an interview after the undergraduate process, after you get in, for these particular merit scholarships, and it depends on the school as well that you're applying to. So for example, at USC, I received the trustee scholarship, right? And that was based on on an interview that they did after I got in. And usually during the undergraduate process, especially in the US, they do not test your skills. They test more of how you can grab knowledge. So it's not like you need to be really intelligent in neuroscience. They already know that you're going to study neuro there. So it's kind of like a waste of time for them to know how much you know already. The main goal of the undergraduate process, especially in the US, is that they want to know if you can grasp that knowledge, right? So for example, in the interviews, they're not going to be asking ABCD questions. They're going to ask questions to gauge your personality and gauge it how you learn things, right? So from my experience, especially for the undergraduate process, going for both Indian colleges and American colleges, the thing is that you need to be proactive. Again, as the other people said, the processes are completely different. So I had to involve myself in extracurriculars, in research projects, and extracurriculars would be, for example, volunteering at SN, as I did, right? And research projects, you can, for example, if there's an university close to you, or there are online free programs that you can do, you can just email professors and ask them if they wanted assistantship. And for example, I learned how to do CAD, right? And I was involved in like an online free program where I used lots of CAD to build an AUV submarine, right? So you can do this completely online as well, especially for research projects. And when you apply for an undergraduate degree in neuroscience, you can do like research in data science. It doesn't even need to be vaguely related to what bachelor's degree you're doing, because honestly, they don't really care about the focus on like a particular stream, because you're going to be studying a wide variety of topics anyways. It's just more of how much knowledge have you gained through high school and what use you have put that to. So yeah,
Is there a way we can take the questions one after the other? I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can actually read some out to you that I've seen
Yeah.
and
Okay.
answered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we choose and reach out to mentors? Like, how do we figure out who we should get as a mentor? Are there any particular aspects or factors we should put into consideration?
Okay. Yeah. That's a super interesting question. When you apply or if you're attending a workshop or a conference, you listen to the speakers, and there are particular speakers that appeal to your interest, and they are so free. You can always write an email or send them a chat later, and they will be willing to work with you. That's one. Then another thing too is if you're very active on social media, like for instance, Twitter and probably LinkedIn, you can just go through some of the feeds. One particular thing I did was when I opened my Twitter account, I just made sure that my Twitter account was just going to be specifically for my academic growth. It's just going to be specifically for neuroscience. So what I did was I followed all conferences in neuroscience, like all associations or societies in neuroscience, like International Society of Neurochemistry, International Brain Research Organization, FINS, I think the EBBS, then SFN. So from there, I could go through, I could also see other people following these organizations. Then I just look up their bio. Does it align to what I want? Is it also very willing to help? And whenever you send them a mail, they are ready to give you a response. I don't know, I'll tell you a story. So one of my strategies was I discovered that whenever maybe a PhD position is advertised, there are lots of people applying for that position, and then the competition becomes so high. So what I did was I said, okay, that's in line with what Vishnu said. It would be nice if I contact these PIs, or maybe on Twitter or on LinkedIn, or maybe send them an email to know if they have an open position. And sometimes too, even if when they advertise, I also want to reach out to them first. So what I do is I reach out to them. I have this draft about a first later introduction of myself, and I tell them, okay, I have attached a copy of my CV and my motivational statement to see maybe if what I've done so far aligns with the candidate you are looking for in your lab. And sometimes I get a response and sometimes I don't get a response. So, and the response are usually, oh, good, you can apply. I believe we can work together. so that's started making up or making that first introduction always gave me an edge. For instance, oftentimes we talk about maybe we cannot afford the funding, because I know that most universities in the United States of America, you have to pay an application fee. Yeah. So once I applied to the Neuroscience Institute at Georgia State University, but before I did that, I already established a contact with a PI. So when they requested I needed to pay for the application fee, I wrote to them, I'm sorry, I cannot afford this application fee. And then I had to write to the PI, and the PI pleaded on my behalf. Oh, sorry, John cannot afford the application fee because of where he's coming from. And they waived it for me. So these are some of the ways you can go about situations like this. Yeah. I don't know if anyone has any other thing to say in relation to that.
Yeah, I can just add to that very briefly before Spatika also can add if she has anything. But I just want to say that I had a 95% success rate with receiving responses from mentors. And I think there are a lot of templates out there with people who share on LinkedIn that you should write it in this way or that way. It's good to have a template to guide you when you look out for prospective mentors, but always make sure that you retain your individuality and your originality. Communicate in an effective manner. Maybe have one or two people whom you feel that they're close to you, review it for you, because don't just blindly take a template from somebody else because they're posting it out there because they want to help you, but it's something that's their original work. So it's kind of like plagiarism, right? It's also a form of plagiarism. Because I do receive emails, or like even my PI, or like I'm sure all PIs receive emails where sometimes they forget to change the name of the PI, or they just send a generic template out. And do not make that mistake, because that is a big thing that sabotages your chances, whether you're reaching out for undergrad or even for grad positions, especially for grad positions, because at that level, they would expect you to have that level of conscientiousness just be careful before you send out the emails. Make sure you double check, triple check, read it correctly, and then send out the email to PIs. Another thing that I would really suggest and recommend is do not send multiple emails within the same span of like a week or something. So if you send them an email and then after 2 days, you'll be like, I'm following up on this, please respond. Do not ever do that, because PIs are really, really busy people. I've seen my own PI, I've seen other PIs. They are swamped with emails every day. So if you keep like sending them, if you act impatient, or like, I understand that you of course want to get an opportunity and you're stressed out about your future, but so are they have to manage a whole lab, they have to manage funding, they have to manage a lot of things, and they have a lot of things going on. So if you're like emailing a PI constantly, that's not good practice. So I would say like maybe wait for a period of a week or two and then do a gentle reminder follow-up. And the third most important advice I can give is that always get in touch with the grad students, because especially at the PhD level or a master's level, you're going to be spending a long time in the lab. So you need to understand what the lab environment is. And this is something that this is an advice that I give to everybody. Don't the more higher you go up or advanced you go up in your education, especially at the PhD level, don't just look blindly at the name of the university or like the program. And sometimes even amazing PIs, I'm sure all PIs are really good and they have their own good or bad, but it's really important to kind of gauge the environment and the culture of the lab. And this is something that I did not really think about much when I was applying to programs, but the more now that I'm going through my PhD and like I speak to other people and I see other people in other labs, the more I understand the importance of this, that of course you have to have a good fit and interest with the research that you're doing, even if it's at the undergrad level and especially at the grad level, because PhDs are long-term things. You're going to spend 5 years of your life while you see other people, getting ahead or maybe settling down, and like kind of like the age that I am in. My friends are finishing up their masters and they're moving on to like actual jobs, and I'm still in school. So those kind of things really tend to take a toll on your mental health. So if you're not in an environment which is conducive for you, which is especially the case in case of PhD programs or like master's level programs, it's not a good deal. So always try to talk to the grad students, because for example, if either of you were to reach out to me about my lab or like some other lab that I am work closely with, I can give you a better picture of how the environment is. And I think that's really important, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with the people. They're going to basically be your colleague. They're going to be your family, especially if you're moving abroad. So you really need to be in a conducive environment. So I would say the two things that I really emphasize is like, one, the first thing, of course, it has to be a good fit with your research interests. And the second thing is choose a mentor who's a good person above everything else, because they could be a Nobel laureate and they could still not be a good fit for you. And that is going to be the end of your career. Or I'm not like over exaggerating. This is really true. I have seen people who've not had supportive mentors and they've really suffered a lot to get ahead. So really make sure that, choose a person who's a good person and be a good person to other people as well. And sorry, I don't want to cut out more time, but the last thing I would say is to build your profile and do any of those things. The first place to start is to know your interest and know a little bit of the science. So I'm not saying that you should learn everything at the same, at one pace. Like I used to get really anxious about, I don't know coding. I'm a clinician and I have to learn Python. I have to learn like 10 programming languages. It doesn't work that way, especially if you're coming into a PhD or a grad program. There's everything new, something or the other new. And I'm sure Spatika can also talk more about this. You learn so many new techniques and there's so many things that you have to keep learning. So don't overstress too much on, becoming a master of all kind of thing, just like, or jack of all, sorry. So don't focus too much on like learning one thing from here, one thing from there, and then overstress yourself, because I did make this mistake. Take care of yourself and be kind of clear about the science or the research interest that you have, because that will really shine through in your emails when you reach out to PIs or you reach out to people. And when you even talk to them, you don't have to know and memorize all the papers and the names of the papers that they have written. Nobody is going to ask you all of that, but just know the basic, know the research interest that you have, see whether it actually interests you. Think about whether you really want to do this long term, like the kind of research that is happening in this lab or that lab. Is this something that you envision yourself doing for a longer period of time? So think about those things. And yeah, I think I'll stop there and maybe I can answer more questions.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention, and also the time you send the email, it's super important, because we are in different zones and there are different time zones. Take for instance, some PIs might get stressed when they receive an email at night, so it's super important to know, like, maybe you can just time it to know at what particular time zone they are in, because when I got to Norway, it's a different academic system, it's a different work culture. Then I discovered that people get very stressed, especially when you send them mails after work hours. So it's super important if you're meeting, if you're sending a mail to a potential mentor or PI, always try to know their time zone and know if they're at work and when to send it. So our advice, maybe if you're sending an email, it should be like something towards in the morning or maybe later in the day, but usually not when it is very late or when they are sleeping. Okay, yeah, go.
Yeah, should I go ahead or is anyone else left?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think you guys have got really great advice from everybody out here. I just want to talk about one thing that is slightly different. Cold emails are great, but they're not everything. They're not make or break. I think everybody here around me seems to have had a very good success rate, but I just want to talk about my experience, which was that grades, you still might not get a response from a professor. And one thing that I noticed when I was doing my undergrad was that people were constantly trying to get internships abroad. And it's always harder to get an internship abroad than it is within the institute that you're working in. So I would recommend that if you really want to just get the research experience, start within your local networks and build your way up. The best way is to have your own supervisor or someone, someone you've interacted with in a class recommend you or have them tell you things, because I'm not discouraging you from writing cold emails to everyone. Please do that, but also know that these are fallback options and they do work. They're most of the reason why I'm over here today. And also, I shared a list of resources in the chat. Those are some of the internships and other programs in neuroscience that I came across. I'm not sure if it's got lost somewhere. I can send it again. I also noticed that there are a lot of people here who are from high school, which I was not aware of. And many people are interested in learning how to approach neuroscience. So the thing is that it's great if you want to read research articles, but I think anybody here who's doing a PhD can tell you that the problem with the higher you go is the more narrow you get. And at a high school stage, your brains are extremely plastic. They're like sponges. They can absorb a lot more than we can. So although Stuti and I may know a lot more in our niche fields, you guys still have the time and the energy to go and explore a lot more broad things. So I wouldn't recommend starting reading research abstracts. They're not really that much fun either. But also, I think the reason why they're less intelligible at your stage is because they're made for people who are so deeply invested in that field. So by all means, try to read it. That's totally fine. But I would recommend going to websites like this, BrainFacts. I found this a great resource, and the entire Society for Neuroscience in the US has set up this great database of neuroscience communication and resources, which are very accessible to people at different stages. And these are the sort of things that I was referring to when I was at a younger stage, because I just wanted to learn about the different options out there. Because you will have your entire life to read research abstracts, trust me. And also, people here who are doing high school in India, if you're interested in applying for undergrad here, in India, I'm more than happy to talk to you about it, because it was only after I came here to Oxford and I saw the system that worked here that I realized a lot of the skills that you end up learning here, my institute in India basically followed a very similar model. I'm not sure about the others, but I'm happy to talk about going to an ICER and studying, because it was made for a science curriculum. And it was not there before I actually, it wasn't there like 10 years ago. It's very, very new. So if you're interested in going into science, I would totally recommend checking that out.
Yeah, I would like to add on, especially because I just finished high school. For all the high schoolers out there, as Spatika said, you need to be very broad with your approach. I'm interested in like more than 10 fields. All right. I'm interested in computational neuroscience, CS, and like biochemistry, and I don't know what else I've discovered. So we're all like a clean slate here, right? So make sure to not narrow down, especially right now. Right, just go through whatever you want. Don't go too high level, because it's very stressful. I like broke my head several times trying to read research abstracts and papers. I didn't understand the thing, right? So the main thing that I would say is start small and build up on your interests. And yeah, that's about it. With respect to applying, especially from India, I see lots of my friends going for BS programs for IAC and ICER and everything, and they have great programs. So like, for example, a BS in biology with a neuroscience concentration, you can do that stuff right now in India. It's emerging right now. So I think Spatika would know more about that because she went to ICER. But yeah, it's definitely an option.
The question would be, have your experiences studying abroad in neuroscience opened up new research or career opportunities that you might not have had access to in your home country? And if so, could you give us some examples?
Shall I just go ahead? But I'm at the graduate level, so I can't speak to the undergrad level. And I don't know who can, honestly, but so I can only speak to my experience after coming here from India at the grad level. I don't know how much of this has to do with going abroad, but it definitely has to do with going to Oxford, because when I came here, I saw that they have an entirely different database and network of recruiters that you have access to. And we get so many of these emails and we get into so many of these networks just by virtue of being a student here. I think that I'm sure other universities in the UK also have it. They have inbuilt, portfolios with companies where they have them partner with the university and recruit students. So if you're looking to go into the more career side of things, as in take a job after grad school, then I did see a lot of opportunities. But if you want to stay in academia, then I think you're going to have to do what everybody does, which is just go through from one degree after the next and eventually become 100 years old before you get a job. I'm just joking. But yeah, it's pretty, if you want to go into academia, it's not going to differ too much.
Yeah, same here at USC, and Vishnu, when you come, you'll see, I guess it's there'll be a lot. Like you won't even have time to navigate. So there's a lot of things that happen. Like I was from CMC Vellore, and CMC Vellore is also pretty, like it's in India, like maybe at the medical colleges level, it's all right there with AIMS and just like, up there. So I think I would like to think I had opportunities, but then when I came here, I was like, wow, this is a whole different world. Like you have networking events for anything and everything. It can be anything in academia. Of course, you have conferences, you have smaller lab group meetings, you have lunches, and the good thing is they always give you free food. So that's amazing. You don't have to worry about like cooking and things like that. But yeah, so you have networking events for women in STEM, you have networking events for whatever racial, ethnic, gender orientation you identify with. You have networking events for specific like subgroups. And I think this is just at the grad level, where you really have to navigate your time. So like I look at so we have a dedicated page. I'm sure even Oxford would have that. We have like a dedicated page or website where you just go in, and like there are hundreds of events happening in a week. Sometimes I get exhausted just reading that list, and I'm like, okay, I don't have time for all of this, because I have my own work to do. But maybe you can just filter through things and just have a look at it. But I'm like at the undergrad level, there will be even more opportunities. So that is again one thing that you should be, since there are a lot of high schoolers, like what I'm seeing here is the general idea is don't stress or overstress yourself too much, like Vishnu said, or like Spatika said. Don't overstress yourself and don't narrow down too much. Be open to everything and anything. After 2 years, who knows, you might decide you want to go into law or you want to go into something else. So you don't know. Like life is really unpredictable. So things keep changing. I would say start, like, again, one thing that I have realized is that maybe if I could go back in time, I would really look at core concepts at more detail. So read your textbooks. And for all of you who are in high school, read your textbooks first. That's the place to start. Reading books will pave a path for you to read papers. So read textbooks. If you want to understand simple concepts, Spatika shared resources. Even I shared a link on the chat. Dana Foundation has great resources for K6 through, I think, K12 grades. Attend local events. Simply Neuroscience itself has like great events that they do. There are other youth neuroscience organizations, things like that we've done in the past. So there are a lot of good resources out there. Don't overburden or overwhelm yourself with learning too many things at once, because then that will really burn you out, and maybe even like you start disliking the field, which is what we don't want to have. We don't want that to happen. We want young people like yourself to come from different backgrounds and more inspired minds into our field and be like the future. So maybe at the master's or PhD level, yes, you can think about it. Think about reading specific papers, finding your niche, things like that. But at the undergrad level, just be open to a lot of things. And yeah, I see a lot of young people, I mean, younger people nowadays getting really stressed out about these kind of things, which is, it's of course, it's important. I mean, I say it like I wasn't stressed at that time, but I was. But it's also very important to not lose your focus and just keep going. So yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Sorry, just to add, I think she made a very good point about the number of events. Before you come here, you'll think that there are so many things to participate in, but then you come here and realize you just don't have that much time. It really seems like amazing from the outside because you have that many opportunities, but then you just get so busy in your work, you can only feasibly dedicate some amount of time to these things. That's something that a lot of people told me before I came here also, and it's very accurate.
Okay, so
Thank you.
yeah, I also
So-
agreed with what Stuti said. You really have to understand the basic principles. So if you're in high school or you're an undergrad, this is the right time for you to understand the basic concepts, because those little things, as you see them, they are very, very important when you start a PhD, or if you're doing a research, because by the time you get to the lab, you need to understand these basic principles. And now when you're doing your PhD, you no longer have that time to go back to read some of your basic chemistry or your biology textbooks. Because I can even remember sometimes I would have to like run back to watch a YouTube video about a basic concept for me to understand what is happening in my reaction or in whatever I'm doing. So it's at this stage, it's very, very important for you to just try to understand the basics and hold it very well, because by the time you start doing a PhD, it kind of gets complex. I saw someone saying neuroscience is complex. Of course, Victoria, neuroscience is complex. Even the PIs will also tell you neuroscience is complex, because with research, it's all about one question leading to another question, and this question leading to another question. But then you shouldn't allow the complexity of neuroscience to overwhelm you. What happens in research, in a research environment, it's you can ask a key question. What is the role of the prefrontal cortex, for instance, to maybe decision making or something? Like, I'm just trying to give an instance. That could be a key research question in neuroscience, and you start trying to figure that out. In the process of figuring that out, then you discover that, oh, maybe the prefrontal cortex has other connections to this part of the brain. And you may want to ask yourself, if I lesion the prefrontal cortex, does it also, if I lesion the prefrontal cortex, does this also affect this part of the brain? Does it also affect this behavior? And then it starts getting wide, and the concepts, it becomes more complex. And one good thing about neuroscience, or one thing we also should know when it comes to neuroscience or research in general, it is very okay for you to say, I don't know, or we don't know. But at the end of this research, we are going to find out. So don't feel that maybe because you have PhDs or graduate students in neuroscience or master students in neuroscience or PIs doing neuroscience research that they are the geniuses. No, we are not. Don't get overwhelmed with the concepts or the complexity of neuroscience. Start very small. Pick an area you're interested in and explore, and just read about it and remain focused. Then there is also this, I think International Youth Neuroscience Association. It's also there for the high school and the undergrad. You can participate in some of their events. I don't know about I think there are some summer schools and workshops for young students. I think you can also participate in that too. Then if you're in Europe, there's this the Kayao School. I don't know if they have or maybe it's just for masters and graduates. I don't know if they also have for undergrad. They are all
No, they're all graduates. They're quite
yeah,
advanced.
yeah, quite advanced. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you can also apply to some of that. Then if maybe there are conferences too, then you can also maybe try to attend. What I would recommend is at this stage, like Spatika said, you can also start local. It's not always about coming abroad. You can start local. Talk to a member of the faculty in your school. Talk to a PI in your school. You can start with them. I have a friend who started publishing at when he was in 200 level, and now I think he's currently in Harvard as an assistant professor. So when I ran into him, I was like, oh my God, how did you do it? I was like, I had a good mentor who made me publish at 200 level. It's a good start. You can always start from there. And I know the International Youth Neuroscience Association have this journal that publishes articles for the young ones. I don't know if Simply Neuroscience also have a journal. Maybe I think maybe that's something we should also look into. Maybe discuss that with Shimai, because it helps build the younger ones into writing and gives you an edge with publication. So it's always good if you start early and start it right, then I believe you just transition and it's boom. Yeah. Is there like any other question we would want to take?
Can I answer the
Okay.
question in the chat? Because it's too much to type. So Arushi asked about any skills that you think you as an incoming undergraduate of computational neuroscience are expected to process. Honestly, they don't really look at your skills. You just need to show through your extracurricular activities and whatever you do that you have the skills to do research, particularly if you're looking towards neuroscience, but they don't expect you to, be able to do MATLAB and machine learning particular to computational neuroscience. You don't need to have any large or very narrow skill set. You just need to have the skills to be able to do research and to be able to sit in a lab, to be able to compute, to be able to learn math. And that's all mostly shown through your honors, academic activities, and all of that stuff. So not very specific skill sets are required, especially as an incoming undergraduate. The next question is, could you please share what interests did you highlight? So I was mainly interested in connecting the brain through computer science and computational neuroscience and connectomics. So in your application essays, it's basically you need to take certain anecdotes of your life or just show your personality and connect it to whatever you want. I connected anecdotes and my personality and stories from my life to how I want to explore the brain. So it's all about connections in your application essays. The interest that you show, it can be related to your major. For me, it was, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be. If you're applying to computational neuroscience, you can still write in your essays about your interests in like business and bridging the gap between science and business, right? So the interests are all up to you, and it's like a plain white slate. It doesn't really need to be particular to your major. Yeah.
Lots of questions on profile building. So this is on different levels. I think Vishnu, you've just finished high school, so I think you could give insights on profile building as a high school student, and then the rest could give for undergrad and graduate school. So what programs, how to structure the programs, how to build a profile in whatever area of interest.
Right. So for high schoolers, well, specific to neuroscience, I can talk about my experience. I do not know about the broader, range of whatever you can do, because there are millions of opportunities both online and in person, depending on where you're from, especially for undergraduates. So for computational neuroscience or for any scientific field where you do a lot of research, I would highly recommend trying to do a research project. Now, I will give you a disclaimer. There is like a really, really small chance that you will be able to do research in neuroscience. It's like, as a high school student, I couldn't get it. I emailed around, like, I think I sent out 200 emails and none of them came up with a good answer, right? Because neuroscience, it's a very, very specific field, and they usually want master's students or PhD students or somewhere in between to be able to be their assistants and not undergraduate students. So even if you're focusing on neuroscience, I would suggest you going to different research areas as well. For example, I did research in a fungal pathogen in biochemistry. I did research in biotechnology, and I did research in like CAD and like eutrophication management. and none of these are, I mean, they're vaguely related to my major relating to like biology and stuff, but it doesn't have to be specific to like, for example, neuroscience if you're applying to that. So with research projects, just like as John said before, you have to send out emails. There are going to be lots of cold emails, no answers at all. The best way, how I communicated to mentors was through, for example, like events through this. I'm forgetting what the name of the event was, but it was also organized by us. And I just reached out to the speaker and told them what I liked about their speech and whatever, and they set up a Zoom meeting. So this is how you just connect to mentors and ask about, neuroscience specific things, or if you can do a research project, if that is feasible with them. When it comes to like extracurricular activities, honestly, sky's the limit. You can do whatever, as long as you're, being truthful to yourself. If you like the stuff that you do, volunteering, music, dance, anything, as long as you like what you do and you go above and beyond to do it, it doesn't matter what it is on the college application. The colleges will be able to see that you've put a lot of effort in, and that's really what matters, and not the content of it, more of the depth of what you go for. So the others take over for the undergraduate.
Yeah, I can go. The question was on profile building, am I right? So I think there is no one specific place to start. It is a little bit different from undergrad, because then you're not like, I don't think they'll be as interested in like how many college fests you organize, even though those skills can be translatable a little bit, because it talks to your organizational skills, which are important for your like lab management and things like that when you're in your PhD or in your master's program. But I think they will look a little bit specifically more at the little bit of research that you have done. And I think nowadays, yeah, I mean, from what you guys I see, or like even in general, each cycle it's getting more competitive. So again, it's not to scare you all, it's just that you should be aware where the whole area of research, or basically the field, is headed. So keep up to date with that. At the end of your undergrad level, it is expected that you would know how to read a few research papers, you would have experience in labs. So the other thing I would say is that as students who are coming from countries like maybe India or Nigeria, no matter how difficult it might sound, we do stand at a certain disadvantage, because we just don't have the same opportunities that people who have got their undergrad from the US or UK, who are applying to grad school in similar countries, might have. So you kind of have to make up for that in terms of like learning new things, new programs, or basically just your initiative taking and your kind of proactiveness. So like I said, like Spatika also said earlier, in India right now, there are things that are coming up, so that you just have to look for it, you have to push for it. The only thing is that there's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of for any position, there are a lot of people who are going for that. So it's just that how do you stand out and like establish your profile. So one of the things I would say is, even if you don't get hands-on like lab experience, if you can work on more computational side of things, so learning statistics, learning a little bit of programming, and this is at the undergrad, post-undergrad level. You can also always apply to RA positions abroad, and even post-bac programs abroad. If you don't want to go into like a specific master's degree, there are post-bac programs, and there are RA positions, lab manager positions. So if you're on Twitter, like John said at the beginning, if you follow academic Twitter, if you follow professors that you're interested in working with, I think many of the labs nowadays have a Twitter page. So you can follow those pages. And sometimes I know that my PI tweets sometimes that I'm looking for a new lab manager, or I'm looking for an RA. So those positions open up, and sometimes universities as well. I know that Yale University, or like a couple of other universities, each university will have like job postings, where they have openings for RAs or things like that. And like PIs will be tweeting about it, that I'm hiring an RA to work on so and so project. So it might be like a 1 year duration, or it might be like a 2 years duration, and you can do that. And while you're doing that, I've seen many people who come in for an RA position and they start working in that position, they gain all the skills required, and most of the times, like many of the times, they are absorbed back into the same lab or in the same university because they already kind of know how things work, and they just continue onto a PhD program within the same lab or things like that. So this is post undergrad. If you don't have a 4-year bachelor's degree, check the requirements. I'm not sure. It's different for different countries. I can speak for the US because I'm in the US. So you have to have like a master's after a bachelor's, which is 3 years, and then you can apply to PhD program. If it's a 4-year bachelor's, you can transition directly into a PhD, but you might require having some additional research work to build a profile. So I would say, if I were to like summarize everything, at the undergrad level, think of broad skills, think more of basics, concepts. At the postgrad level, that is after your undergrad, that is a time when you need to start thinking a little bit more in depth, and start narrowing down. Again, like applying to 15 different labs which are doing completely 15 different things is probably not going to be a good idea. So start narrowing down a little bit, see things which are interesting to you, and then find out what your interests are and put them to test by volunteering in different labs or taking up different RA positions within your country, or if you can outside your country also will be great. And then the third thing would be to start taking action on it, that is start reaching out and things like that. So yeah, I think.
Sorry, Stuti, can you also talk about the post-baccalaureate program in the United States of America? Because I think it's only the US that does post-baccalaureate programs.
Yeah, there are post-bac programs in certain universities. I think Michigan, I don't really remember the names of the universities, but if you just type post-bac neuroscience programs, they're available. Many of them, again, I would caution, are probably not open to international. There might be only for US citizens. So that is something that you need to look into, but there are some post-baccalaureate programs that you can talk about. You can look at. And again, sorry, there's another question in the chat. Are there industrial PhD opportunities in neuroscience? What do you mean by industrial PhD? I mean, you can, so yeah, just because someone asked that question.
Add to that in case.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
So actually, I have found collaborations between industry and doing a PhD, mainly in the UK. I didn't see this option when I was applying to the US. So there are a lot of PhD opportunities that are, the thing about applying to Europe and the UK also is that you can apply to a lot of things independently outside of the university system. So you can apply to advertise programs that are entirely regulated by the foundation or by the PI. And like Stuti said, they might show up on Twitter, or they might show up on websites like the Federation of European Neuroscience Societies. It has an entire database, or find a PhD or something. So you can apply to do a PhD, and there are projects in the UK called iCase projects. They're industrial case studentships, which means that they are partly funded by the industry, and you do an internship with the industry towards the end. And there are opportunities to do it in neuroscience, a lot of labs that do it in neuroscience. So you end up going to work with the industry during your PhD as well.
Okay, yeah. So I will just talk about the post-bac program. I used to have a mentee who once applied for a PhD, for an MS PhD opportunity in the US, but then he couldn't get there. He couldn't get it because he had limited laboratory skills and research experience. So he was advised to apply for the post-bac program. So that was how I got to know about the post-bac program. So what the post-bac program does is it trains you, and you obtain the skills that are necessary for doing a graduate study. And the most interesting part of it is you also get paid while you do this. I think it looks more like a graduate assistant position in Nigeria. I think that is what it's similar to. And it's also very wonderful opportunity to try that out. I don't believe it's so competitive with obtaining a PhD. So most especially for us from maybe India and Nigeria, you can try that out. Then after doing it for 1 year, then you can just apply to a graduate study. Then for you to talking about maybe building your profile, I will always recommend starting locally, because students from Nigeria and maybe India, because that's where most of us are, it's usually very difficult for you to get some of these positions because it is highly competitive. Because first of all, they want to know about your research experience. And the only way you can show your research experience is maybe if you've had some internship opportunities or if you're a research assistant. So during the period of maybe you finished grad school, or even while you're still an undergrad, you can just attach yourself to some neuroscience lab. This was something I did because after my master's, I had to visit some neuroscience lab, and I applied as a volunteer, and I was with them, and I acquired some basic skills like maybe how to prepare some reagents, understand the laboratory environments, and that really works. And I must tell you, it is very good for your CV because the PhD program, it's a totally independent research program because the whole aim of it is to make you an independent researcher. So if you attach yourself to a lab and you acquire some of these basic skills, they are highly important during your PhD research, and it is good for your CV. So that's one. Then two, another interesting good part of attaching yourself to a lab as becoming a volunteer or a research assistant is, aside getting integrated into the laboratory culture, you also gain experience on how to write research papers, how to read and understand research papers, because then you get exposed to journal clubs and discussion groups. So even if you're a research assistant to a lab doing a particular research, you stand the opportunity of having your first publications with them. Because most PhD interviews I did, they wanted to know if I can write a good paper, for instance, because they always ask, what is your writing experience like? What is your research experience like? Can you write a research paper? And the only way you can show that you can write a research paper, it's probably by having a research article. It's not so compulsory for you to have at least 10 or 20 or 15 articles, no. But if you can have 1 or 2 or 3 in prestigious journals, it is very good for your CV, because it doesn't only show that you can write a research article, it also shows that you can collaborate. And collaboration and networking, we know, they are among the keys among the tools for science. And then you shouldn't just limit yourself to the things you can do. It's very okay to get rejections, because a couple of times I received several rejection emails, but then I just tap myself at the back and I move on, because it is better for me to apply and get a no than I don't apply and I don't get to attend. So that brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. So if you're preparing for a graduate school, it's also important for you to have an international experience. So make use of the sponsored IBRO school. The International Brain Research Organization organizes some of these schools that are region specific. You have schools for the European region, you have for Asia, then you have for Africa. In any region you find yourself, and the schools have specific themes. You can have schools in neurotoxicity, in neurodegeneration, in synaptic biology. And these schools, whenever you are invited, it is fully sponsored. So please, attending an IBRO school opens up the door for you, because not only you get to learn and improve your skills, you also get to network. And some of these facilitators you meet at the IBRO school, they end up becoming your potential mentors and recommenders. So whenever you apply for graduate programs, you can reach out to them like, oh, please, can you be my referee for this? And they are willing to help you. And sometimes you might even get so lucky that they have grants and invite you to their lab. That is still another way to improve your CV. Then, and if you do that, it shows your networking. Then if you also have an opportunity, please try and attend at least an international conference. It helps too, because they want to know how you communicate science. How do you communicate science? You communicate science through writing, then going for conferences and doing presentations. Because if you're able to show that you've done a presentation in a conference, it also means that you have a presentation skill, which is something they are looking out for. So, and sometimes some of these conferences are also grants for them. I know that the Ibro World Congress, they have a grant for it. The Society for Neuroscience that will be happening in November in US, they also have a grant for that. Then EBBS, they all have grants. Just apply, or before you apply, draft your essay, send it out for feedback, apply. Even if you get a no, it's better to get a no than not to apply. And just know that if you have, I can tell you, if you have 10 no's, just a yes, in 1 yes, it's going to change all the no's. Just be positive and keep pushing, because these opportunities, they are there for you. Just be positive and just keep moving. You shouldn't have this, you shouldn't have, I don't know how it is called, like this gap in your career. Maybe you finished your undergrad and then there's this, you have about 2 years or 3 years looking for a PhD position, or you finish your master's and you have about 2 or 3 years gap looking for a PhD position. Within those, okay, sorry, I will share a link to the Ebro grants applications. So within those periods, you're not doing anything or you've finished, just try to acquire skills, try to collaborate, try to network, try to attend conferences. Even if you don't go in person, you have the virtual option. They are all there to help you and they will help build your CV. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. You've given us so much incredible insight. Thank you so much. However, we're far ahead of time. And thank you so much once again to everyone for all the information you've given us. It's been really helpful, especially to the high school students who have formed a majority of our participants today. And so I think now for the rest, I'd just like to thank the participants for attending today. And you have some of the contact information of the speakers. So afterwards, should you have more questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we'd love to see you for more Simply Neuroscience sessions throughout the week. And all the best. Thank you so much for attending.